Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for turning up this morning. Our speaker today is Gerhard Meintjes. Gerhard is a passionate explorationist. He's also very keen on the Ventersdorp lavas. So he's having a relook at that in his retirement and bound to come up with some really good stuff on that. Interestingly, if you go back into his background, he was also at one stage destined to be a farmer and even worked in the States as a farmer to gain experience. Anyway, he ended up doing a PhD at the University of the Free State and then had stints with Anglo Val and Goldfields before seeing the light like many other of the big corporate geologists, and ended up running his own consulting business very successfully for many years. And in the course of that period, he has spent a lot of time working in the Namaqua land and has a great knowledge of the base metal and other deposits in that area. So we welcome him today. This is his second talk, and he's going to concentrate on the non-sort of traditional base metals. In other words, he's going to leave out copper and nickel and those things, and talk about all the other potential that exists in that part of the world. Thanks, Gerhard, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Eni. Yeah, as a follow-on last year's talk on the base metal prospectivity of the Namaqua sector, John asked me to do something about the other metals and minerals in the area. I didn't really work in this field, and I didn't pick up that much on that in the Northern Cape, but I'll try my best. Let's take the road and let's see what is going on there. The Namaqua sector of the Namaqua Natal province are indicated in the bright pink on this map. It is the outcrop in the Northern Cape extending into Namibia across the border. And we must also remember this outcrop in Natal, also with interesting mineralization. We will not cover that in this discussion. And the areas in between is under younger cover, mainly Karoo supergroup as well. Firstly, we'll just update ourselves on the geological terrains, or rather domains of the Namaqua sector, and then we'll have a look at these different metals and minerals other than base metals. And the aim is to let us think about exploration and potential for the area and hopefully stimulate some mining. It's like the previous talks, just based on public domain information, and like I said, it's restricted to the South African side. You will remember this maybe from the previous talk. Carbol Craton out in the east, very old terrain, Thais younger terrain, and then you have the so-called Richtersveld, Bushmanland, Cordonia, or also called Takamas, Ariaga, and Cayenne, which we last time I called terrains. So there's alternative view to the traditional tectonic model for this area, and then according to that, we should call it domains. Last, I also showed that the tectonic model for the area is nothing but fixed yet. So there's still a lot of different theories and different approaches to each theory. And the alternative view is that it's not a subduction and accretion of different terrains that got abducted on the conveyor belts, but it's maybe all of it is deformation in a back arc setting, so it's rather domains than terrains. It doesn't really matter from what we're saying today. It is, we will soon see that there's some interesting support for that in the very first section we look at. So if you think, if you take the 1998 Mineral Resources Handbook of South Africa, and you work from A to Z, you can come up with all these metals that occur in the area, and there's more, and all the minerals that is occurring from a mining point of view in the area, and I've added a bit more here. So there's a whole host. And the first thing that comes to my mind, if you look at these rare earths and other metals, are, of course, the pegmatites that occur in the area. And these are a whole host of metals and minerals that occur that could be mined or were mined in the past. So we'll have a brief look at that. Rare earths, of course, a lot of them are not that rare. But what is probably the rarest of them is the correct pronunciation of the minerals and metals that occur in them, or form part of that group. And yeah, the second thing that's rare is the successful extraction of the metals from these minerals, which is often the problem in developing the deposits. The Orange River Pegmatite Belt is what it's all about. Some outcrops here in the front and a vista of the typical Bushmanland area. The Orange River Pegmatite Belt occur over a strike of 450 kilometers from Fjordsdrift, Steinkopf area in the west. Springbok down here, that's the main road up to Namibia. Orange River, the border here, and it goes up to close to Kaimus, Kakamas area, and then down past Kenhardt to south of Pitsonderwater. Marydale, Prieska is out here in the east, and Copperton, the Prieska mine, is just off the Pegmatite belt here in the south. In the triangles show some of the pegmatites that's been in production in the past. Across Namibia, we could just mention that Stampolite Valley over there. A lot of these deposits and production in the past was about a feldspar, which is still in demand as an industrial mineral. And what is interesting about the Orange River Pegmatite belts, all the other domains were treated or were formed, or the main deformation of that was in sort of a time period about 1.3 to 1.1 billion years ago, while the Orange River Pegmatite belt is somewhat younger than that. But you will notice the strike is over all of those different domains. So it came later and is considered to have been included in the area, which is abnormal, of course, compared to normal pegmatites, which form, of course, as a late fluid of including magma bodies. So I think there's still a lot that's not properly understood about this pegmatite belts, but it just shows the source from deeper down is a very fertile source. I mean, apart from this and all the base metals there, it's amazing. Some of the minerals that carries rare earths and some of the metals that we know occur in these pegmatites. Some of the industrial minerals that occur and was mined in the past. Some of them still being mined. And the thesis by Gerhard show quite nicely how the pegmatites occur in red here, Orange River and blue there. There are a lot of them, and not all of them are mineralized in an economic sense of point of view, but a lot were mined in the past. The far western side of it, this is Steinkopf here in the south, and Springbok, the main road up to Noordoever, Namibia. So that's the western edge of the pegmatite belt. There's been a lot of production from this area, especially feldspar. And a thesis by Hendrik Minnaar in about 2006, I think, looked at the financial potential of these pegmatites, and he came up with a figure of 15 million tons of feldspar that could be mined still. One of the more interesting pegmatites in the area is the Blesberg mine, Namaqua pegmatite, out in the west, just west of the road. Recently, it's been in the news. Australian company were looking at getting involved there. I think they're called Australian Vanadium. That's about 2015, I think. I'm not sure what happened to that or what's where it is at the moment. But there's been interest from exploration and mining juniors in the pegmatite belts in the recent years. Noma's East, I think that photo is, I'm not 100% sure, but that's typically how these pegmatites, or some of them are mined, almost vein-like, and some of them steeping, dipping, and that you can see, get some idea of the mining approach and operation there. The far eastern side of it, that's Spits onder water. Kenard over here, so Copperton and Priska mine is just to the south here, that's Uppington there. These deposits have also seen quite a bit of activity, and I believe as late as the 1980s there was still some activity here. When stand back and look at the situation, I think typical of the older mining and smaller mining activity in South Africa is pretty poor record of the exact mining and production that took place. There are reports available from the 50s and 60s when they were still very active, but there's been relative little scientific research, especially more modern research. There's been a few theses that one see that came out the last 10, 20 years on it. But I think there's a lot that we don't understand about these pegmatites. And I'm not sure we really know in the present interest in rare earths and the new tech metals, what really occur in these pegmatites. What was mined in the past, things like lithium and so on, we've moved onto other metals as well. And I don't think there's a proper record where we are. As far as that is concerned. So it certainly needs an update on the data inventory available, and it needs a reinvestigation from a scientific point of view. Maybe there are something on that with Council of Geoscience, not that I'm aware of, but we need to look at this again. It's definitely got potential for smaller scale mining. We tend to look at the very large scale mining from the major, certainly colleagues from my age, we used to work for the big companies and the approach that they had. But we've lost a lot of the smaller scale, and I'm talking professional mining, not pick and shovel stuff, but we've lost a lot of that for various reasons. And it's got potential to support that kind of mining, which can create a lot of work in the Northern Cape. So it needs a re-evaluation, and things have changed as far as recovery is concerned, and also from a mining point of view, so there's potential. What are these metals? This is from Jock Harmer's presentation a few years ago, and you get an idea of the metals that is of high interest at the moment. There's more, of course, but most of these do occur, but some of them we simply just don't know if there's potential in the Northern Cape for them, apart from the pegmatites as well. Some of the deposits have been tested, other deposits been tested, but we still don't have a good picture of that. We move on to tungsten. Tungsten is quite an interesting metal. It's got this strange capacity to cause unexpected ventilation holes in thin skin armor. And if you're on the inside of the thin skin armor, it's not really very desirable. Have some experience of that kind of situation. So wars in the past, Second World War, stimulated a lot of interest and production from this area. So Cape Copper Belt has got a lot of tungsten deposits that has been mined. The colored section of these These squares indicate how much of the deposit has been mined out. So there's been significant production from this. And after the Second World War, I think the Korean War also stimulated further activity, but then it tapered off. But there's still a lot of potential in the area for further discoveries. And again, it is very amenable for smaller scale mining. The renewed interest in the acute copper belts might stimulate further interest in the tungsten occurrences here as well, I think. North of that copper area, towards Steinpop would be down here, Geoscientists, again in the Pegmatite belt. In the western sector, there's been production, but a lot of these have still got a lot of resources on them, and again, good potential for further discoveries. I think in the previous slide, you saw some of these deposits contain somewhere between 100 and 1,000 tons of tungsten metal, and the present prices is quite significant. So one can calculate some potential from that. Towards the Grabis area as well, and still potential for further production from these deposits. We will see that if you haven't been to the area recently, there's been a lot of further developments on the grape and table grape production in the area. So these a lot of these areas is maybe sterilized for, I wouldn't say sterilized, but it's not going to be easy to mine it because of all the farming development in the area. If we look, I think you all know about Renewable, close to Grabis. Believe Alan Saad will give a talk about that to the Northern Cape branch of the Geological Society. He did his thesis on that, I think, and he will be able to tell more about the geology of that specific deposit. Towards Uppington, north of the Orange River here, Kaimus down here, there's also a lot of deposits here and a lot of further potential. We'll see later on, I think most of this area is also sterilized by other developments. The Northern Cape, or the Namaqua sector, surprisingly has got a lot of uranium occurrences and deposits. We'll talk about Steenkampskraal later, which is a vein, monazite vein deposits. There's more of those similar geology and similar deposits in the area of Steenkampskraal, southeast of there, towards other side of Gurries, and then north of Steenkampskraal, Kliprand, and then again the Okiep Copper District, granites in the area, the pegmatites we looked at. And there's also superficial deposits in the region, and even in the younger formations like Eka and Dwaika, and then much younger geology, we look at Sankov's drift later as well. Steenkampskraal monazite mine, you can look at their websites. They've been trying to restart this mine, if I call it that, because there was significant thorium production on the deposit in the 50s and 60s, and it still contains a very significant deposit of rare earths. And if you analyze monazite, that's been reported in the past of the breakdown of the metals contained in monazite. And it's got a whole host of other metals, not necessarily of economic value, but it's a very interesting deposit. Again, it's about the same age as the pegmatites, or that appears to be so. So it's contemporaneous to the formation of the pegmatites. As I mentioned, north of that, there's similar occurrences that's got potential. The superficial uranium deposits in the area occur over quite a large area,
And we mentioned the liquid granites in the area that contain uranium. The superficial deposits typically occur in paleo riverbeds. A number of them has been identified, and some has been explored and advanced, but not. I don't think there was any production from it yet. The increased deposit is over here, close to the Orange River, discovered by Anglo and investigated by them, I think, in the 1970s. And there's been recent, a lot of interest in that in the last number of years, but nothing much as advanced as far as I know. So let's look at the increase. Cross-section, filling of the paleo riverbeds, and these two horizons on which uranium concentrated. And the uranium probably derived from those pegmatites and granites. So these are young deposits, but they're very interesting, very shallow. There's a lot more potential from what has been identified at the increase itself. A fairly significant deposit has been identified on the increase so far. Should be relatively low-cost mining. But I mean, uranium is a market that's not always that easy, and there's a lot of competition worldwide. So we'll see what will happen to this. At one stage, extract resources were looking at it, and various other companies. The trenches that were dug give you a typical idea of what it is about. Upper section typically has got kieselguur, and could be also added production from such a deposit, and then underlined by carbonaceous clays and so on, which is really, I believe, the higher grade part of the deposit. Recently, well, 2014 apparently, Council of Geoscience in yellow, flew mag and radiometrics, which covers basically the whole Namaqua sector. I have not seen this data. Nobody that I have contacted and is in contact with has seen this data. But that should be interesting as far as these uranium superficial deposits are concerned as well. Must mention the carbonatite, that's also a fairly old age, pre-Namaqua sector, sitting out on the eastern side of the Namaqua sector on the Overberg fault. And apart from this specific carbonatite occurrence, there's other rocks and formations along that, these structures that certainly could be related to the same events. Poorly understood, discovered by Anglo. They had a look at it at the time, and other companies probably certainly also had a look at it, but it definitely got potential for base metal, rare earths, and potentially also base metals for all we know. Surprisingly, gold also discovered by Anglo. South of Pits on the Water, again close to the main structure between Kaapval and Namaqua. South of Marydale, there is a gold occurrence associated or close to a granite dome here, so-called Witkop deposit, which is the portion of the farm Eierdorp pan called Witkop. Also held by Orion Minerals, and they have a mining right application on it on a fairly small size resource at present. But if one look further at the Namaqua sector, even though Ukip copper district has got gold associated with the copper, a lot of course, these VMS deposits like Pisco Mine and others have gold associated with it as a additional metal in the deposits. And there's certainly further potential in the area that one don't really think about until you start picking up our common gold is in the area. One of my colleagues at one of the companies I worked got transferred to a KIP when it was still mining, and I think it was within a week he discovered a vein of gold in the copper mine, which was quite amusing to us. Let's look at industrial minerals. Industrial minerals is all about what product you have and what market you can secure. If you know what you have and what you can do with it, you can market it. And a lot of smaller operations, as quietly in the years of the big companies here, have been quite successful in doing this. One of my business partners at a Polgite mine, and it's amazing what markets they could get for that specific product they generated from the small open cast operation. Industrial minerals in the Namaqua sector, as indicated there, that's been of interest in the past. Some of it's still being mined. As I mentioned, it's all about what you can do with it. Otherwise, it's not going to be a successful operation. And I don't think we as geologists often think properly about this. As geologists, we can easily get involved in operations like this or see the potential and develop it. Siliconite has been mined extensively in the Pella area, which is along the Orange River there, where the well-known date production is also taking place. Just outside Pella, close to the main roads, you can see some of the old workings there. There's two types of siliconite deposits in the region, either associated with pollitic rocks or successions, or semitic successions, and it also typically some of them contain corundum as well. Wollastonite, I think John will be able to tell us more about it, just west of Gurries. And it is presently held. I'm not sure what mining is taking place by Namaqua wollastonite. I believe this occurrence is a long fiber wollastonite, which is very sought after, and it's got a better market than the shorter varieties. Kieselguur has been mined in the area in the past. It is quite an important industrial minerals, all sorts of applications. It can fetch quite a high prices if you can secure the right markets and you have the right product. I think our industry uses quite a bit of this, I think mostly imported. And you get an idea of the fields in the Northern Cape and some of the occurrences. There's more than what's indicated on here. Some of these, I had a look at one of these deposits east of Uppington that's been off and on in production for a very long time. Very interesting industrial mineral, if one can call it that. And it's got so much application, and you can develop those markets if you can convince the industry that you got the product that will work better for them than what they use alternatively. Interesting. About 10 years ago, it was finally understood why the dust from the Sahara is so nutritious. Most of that dust blows over to the Amazon basin, and why it so easily creates these huge dust clouds that go very high up into the atmosphere. It's basically the Paleo Lake Chad that was much larger than present, and that lake bed that's exposed now is a diatomaceous earth deposit, and it very easily gets picked up by winds, and that is what most of that cloud is apparently consisting of. That's what they look like. It's more interesting than that, depending what species of diatoms were present, and that is what the product typically look like. It very doesn't look like much, but it does do a lot to whatever you add it on to cattle feed, etc., and using it as a filter in the petroleum industry. A lot of quartz in the area. Dimension stone has been produced, and I think still being produced in some areas there. And there is a company that's last few years been in the news trying to apply all these quartz occurrences in these brilliantly white little hills that form from them. The company is called African Silica or African Quartz, I believe, and they have plans to put up high-tech facilities at Uppington to process these quartz further for different kind of applications. Not sure where they stand at the moment, but they are in the news, and the websites give more detail about it. Apart from the Namaqua sector, there's younger intrusive complexes that are of interest. We'll look at the Kogelfontein complex, which is over here. This is Fontaine Suite is also in the area, and we'll look at a quick look at these interesting kimberlites and melanites in the area, which maybe not of economic view, but it's very interesting from a geological point of view. I think the recent talk on Salpeterkop has got a lot of very interesting information and geology of that occurrence and the rest of the intrusive in that area, so we won't look at that. Kogelfontein, close to Gurries on the west coast here. There's Brandsebaai. Main road is a bit east of there. Is a very interesting complex of a complex with different rock types, and one intrusive or a body that's in the area, Sandkorps Drift, has been looked at. Again, Anglo-American in the past, but presently Frontier Rare Earths is trying to get it in production from a rare earth point of view. Anglo identified almost 50 million tons of phosphate, but unfortunately, the mineral in which it's contained is very difficult to get production from, so that didn't happen. We'll look at Frontier Earths and what Frontier Rare Earths has identified these resources, which is quite significant, and the metals a whole suite of rare earths that some of which could be recovered, and they're trying to get this into production. Stompoort kimberlite is sitting out close to Jacomynspan, Kennard, Marydale area, just west of that, and there's a lot more of kimberlitic melanites intrusive in the area. Very interesting. There's a lot more. Stompoort is not even indicated on this Google Earth view, but there's a lot of them out here. And the hole that De Beers drilled into Stompoort intersected sediments for significant depth. It appears like these volcanoes or these vents have blown a hole in the upper crust and didn't fill it with much, just blew everything out, and there was this 200, 300, 400 meter deep shafts, almost these holes sitting in the crust, and then got filled in with debris and the lakes that formed at the bottom, and the drill hole, the large diameter 4 drill hole, at this perfect imprint or fossil of a frog in it as well. Very interesting. Then one think about all these occurrences that we saw in the previous slide. I mean, there's a lot of them out here. Some of them were mapped as breccias or sandstone breccia pipes, because that's what they filled with. And if there were any dinosaurs around, must have been a very interesting time with all these holes being blown up. Maybe that's it's about 60, 65 million years ago, I think. So it's interesting. What does that mean? That could be another theory about the great extinction of the dinosaurs. There's many theories as well. You know, this is one of them on dinosaur extinction. One mustn't forget about the potential for dimension stone and decorative stones in the area. We all see these cages at the garden markets. Not sure how they catch these stones in these traps, but that's quite an interesting market. You can just look when you're at next time see these for sale at the prices, and a lot of that activity is happening without any permitting. It also makes good gravel road material in the area with a bit of calcrete added to it. But it's quite spectacular white little quartz outcrops, and unfortunately those outcrops are also the habitat of the very rare and unique museum species we got in South Africa. Often see news items of somebody that's been caught again smuggling these rare plants, and they're really very spectacular. So mining of that or exploitation of these garden decorating stones must be done with care. It's not my fingernail there, somebody else's, I must say. But this specific one, they also have interesting name. It's called Transpilities. I have to mention the development of energy, solar and wind farms in the Northern Cape. Surprisingly, while one were busy doing something else, a lot of that has been happening. This is outside Uppington. The key Solar One facility that is using this technology to heat up, I think it's sodium they're heating up there. I'm not sure what they're using, but it's a brilliant tower during late afternoon when the sun is setting. You can see it from miles away when you drive over there. It's got capacity of 50 megawatts. And there's a lot more. That is Key Solar One and also other facilities in the area. These have got total capacity of 258 megawatts. Of course, all these facilities and other high-tech developments in the area are using those rare earth metals. So it's almost like coming home again. This is just north. This is just north of the Uppington Cables Road. Orange River is just south from this picture, and that's where some of those tungsten deposits occur. It's huge, really huge facilities. A quick look at all the facilities in this area that we've been talking about. It's amazing what's been happening. Most of them are fully operational. Total capacity of all of these 1.77 or 1,774 megawatts. I'm not sure if Eskom is generating any electricity anymore. There's also other high-tech developments. Car testing facility outside Pofadder. I believe it's Audi's, also used by other manufacturers. The straits here are 7.5 kilometers long, so you can build up a head of steam on that section. Another one, not sure if it's operational yet or being built yet. I couldn't find it in Google Earth, but the Google Earth satellite images were a little bit old. When I looked at it, I think it's Mercedes, Daimler building this. They listed this Daimler. Northeast of Uppington on the road to Olifantshoek, I think it will be built. Similar, I think, dimensions than the Audi facility. You may be aware that the road from just other side of the Vravis turnoff from Kakamas to Pofadder and Pella, past Kamsberg, Aggeneys, basically just to outside Uppington. Outside the Springbok, you will see this board saying it's a testing facility, a high-speed testing facility if you got the right papers. So you sometimes do see cars being tested at high speed over there. And if you're cruising along, minding your own business and at peace with the world, just watch your mirror and you see a black speck in the distance, you will very soon realize it's getting larger very quickly, and they're definitely not doing 250. I was going backwards when they came past me, for sure. So take care when you're out there. As a final, let's look at, just stand back and look at the area. I really think we must think about the Northern Cape again from a perspective of these high-tech metals. And what is really out there? Do we really know what is there and what the potential is? I don't think so. Smaller scale mining, it's got good potential for that. Smaller scale mining has been rare in South Africa since probably the 70s, really. And we don't normally think about that. I'm talking about professional mining, not pick and shovel kind of operations. And it takes people with knowledge and with a bit of an entrepreneurial flair to make it successful. And young geologists nowadays, I've seen some doing amazing things in Africa at large, and there's certainly opportunity to do something in this area as well. A lot of the smaller scale mining is finding it difficult because of all the red tape with legislation at the moment, and government has indicated they want to address that and make it easier for smaller operators to get the right permitting and everything in place. And I think government certainly can assist more as well with getting access to market and getting offtake agreements for these kind of minerals and metals that can be produced there. Again, free markets. Let the free markets do it and do it and have as little interference as possible in the people that make it happen. So I think it's blue sky country. We must look at it, but be aware of the sun in that area. You might start seeing double and even hallucinate of planes in the sky. But we must go and have a look at it and wonder what is happening out there. But do take the road and go and have a look. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gerhard. Fantastic, and got to agree with you that it needs a whole new relook. Very pertinent to all this is that massive geophysical survey, and where is that data, and why is it not being used properly, and why aren't we having more exploration initiatives out there?
Yeah, John, I did got all of a contract to the principal that owns the company that was flying in an area. He said they finished a huge section east of on the Natal side of along the super border, and they were flying out in the Eastern Free State when I spotted them. And he said they will continue with the rest of the Free State down to the south and then a bit more. And he also mentioned that they completed at that stage huge surveys from west of north of Kimberley down to the south. So it adds on to that block that I showed, down to the bits down to the it's along the Crathorne edge. And it's on their website, you could see they've been flying huge surveys for government, apart from other work they're doing. And as far as I know, everybody that I talk to, that data is not listed. It's not available. So yeah, they flew mag and gravity.
Yeah. No, it's something we'll pick it up at the end, but let's throw it open to questions. And I see Jock there. Jock, have you got any comments about the potential of all those other minerals in the Namaqua land?
Yeah, it was Steenkampskraal is a deposit with a identity crisis. You know, it was a thorium mine, and it was a rare earth hotspot during the exploration. I see they're back to thorium now, but it's an interesting one, that because if once thorium reactors come online and you can actually sell the thorium, it's a game changer in those sorts of deposits. Just like to comment on Keikamsput that was picked up there. Verwoerd described it as a carbonatite back in '93, but was very 50-50 about whether it was or wasn't. And it's in all the international summaries and databases now. And I've got an MSc student, he's just finishing up now, that's been doing a proper look at it. And there are definitely carbonatites there, but the entire body is not a carbonatite. The entire body is just the regional sedimentary rocks, but there are carbonatite dikes cutting across it. And they are carrying the rare earth, quite high rare earths. And what is important is the rare earths and some of these things have leaked out into the country rocks. You're getting phenatization around them. So some of these sedimentary dolomites are actually picking up reasonable rare earth grade. So it is it's a very interesting prospect, and it's in the process of being licensed at the moment, I understand.
Good to hear that there's someone working on it, Joe.
Well, they're about to, and once they get the permitting done.
Yeah. Okay. All right. More questions, comments? John Blaine.
I didn't do much in the pegmatites and that, although I did spend a couple of months working at McTaggart's camp, Dyerson's Cliff, and I mean, there was obviously a lot of work done there in the past, and it was very difficult to get any of the historic information, some significant mining. And I guess that was way back in, probably in the 40s, and tungsten was much in demand during the war years. But yeah, just like all these places, finding old records is as big a job as actually doing the new work and doing a proper evaluation. It's always frustrating when you see large holes in the ground and piles of waste. You want to know what they took out of there, because there's very little left to study. But we had a good crack at it. And the biggest challenges was dealing with the farmers in those days in their little narrow strips of land of owned mineral rights. Nowadays, probably a bigger challenge dealing with the government to get rights to do anything. So, there were holes in the ground then, but there are mountains ahead of us now.
Yeah, good point. And Gerhard, I mean, and the experts, just in terms of new exploration, modern exploration, obviously there's that great geophysical data. What other sort of work would you go and do in the area to pinpoint some of the really smart anomalies?
Well, I mean, the first thing would be the geophysics, and start with sort of council stuff, which that was a presentation they gave in 2016, or some of the staff that said that survey that I indicated there was flown, I think at 200 meters spacing, 50 meters height or 80 meters. So it's fairly good data, and at least start over that. But you'll have to do a bit of research to understand the geology a bit better. I'm not an expert on this. I mean, Jock and other guys will be able to better judge how to do it. But firstly, that government data should be quite good quality that I've flown in 2014. And that would be, of course, the first. But I think with satellite imagery and some of these pegmatite minerals, one can see a lot from that. Firstly, one must think from a scientific geological point of view, what has got the unknown potential in the area that's not been properly looked at. That's where you should start.
Yeah. No, someone just put up a comment and I just missed it, but it's a very valid point, Gerhard, and you alluded to it, and we again see it in the diamond space. I mean, there's huge scope and potential, I would think, for smaller mining, which you again mentioned in this area, and if the permitting was done speedily and there wasn't all this red tape, obviously there's sensitivities. It is an environmentally special area as well, and the plants you mentioned or show that. But there's, if you look at the Northern Cape as a whole, excluding, say, Sishen and the manganese deposits, they're big areas which could certainly employ people, particularly from all those little towns in the north and west. The wollastonite deposit is a fascinating one. It's effectively probably a metamorphosed carbonate deposit, and that long fiber wollastonite, for those who don't know, is non-carcinogenic. So wollastonite is a great mineral in terms of replacing asbestos, and I don't know if it's still ongoing, but Everite were buying the product from one of Rudolf de Bruyn's companies, Incubex, that was involved at that wollastonite deposit. And I'm sure when you go looking around in the Namaqua land, you'll find a lot more of those, really exciting industrial minerals.
Yeah, John, just on the wollastonite and that western part of the region, I think there's a lot more that one might find along that near coastal strip going up. I mean, if you look at the Carib Age events, sort of a trial run for Gondwana breakup or South America, South Africa moving apart, on the South America side, I believe, there's a lot of deposits on land, while maybe some of ours are sitting out on that sunken continental part on the west coast. But there are some interesting geology in that region and interesting potential that I think one must look at again. We were largely just thinking about coastal, the diamonds along the coast and so on. Mm-hmm. But there's interesting rocks in that area that could have more potential, and maybe from what they have on the South America side can lead one to what you should look for.
Yeah, no, agreed. Anyone else? And just to add to your talk, Gerhard, which was fascinating, there were two things you didn't cover. Obviously, there's all the mineral specimens. There's some amazing mineral specimens that also come out of those pegmatites, and then probably the most colourful part of that whole region are the characters, and the real classic prospectors that were involved in many of those early discoveries. And you only have to think of Jack Carstens on the alluvial diamonds at Alexander Bay, and of course, he was followed by some of our other real smart geologists not long thereafter. And people like George Swanson, and there's some lovely stories about him prospecting. I think it must have been for scheelite at night with a UV lamp, and he built himself a litter, which he then got his staff to carry him in, and they'd go walk about, across these, I guess, pegmatites and parts of Namaqua land looking for scheelite and tungsten. So there's some wonderful stories of the characters who sort of opened up Namaqua land, and really it's been quite sad that area sort of lost, or the interest got lost once things like the Wits and the Bushveld and the big kimberlites were found. Anyway, there's lots of potential for other people to hopefully still unlock if we can get our mineral rights and cadastral systems properly sorted. Any other comment?
There's something on the sea light. We like some of the geologists that were involved in the uranium heyday in Northern Cape and Namibia. Also, then related how they then discovered at night how many scorpions are about, because a lot of them do show up on the UV light.
Yeah. Fantastic. And there's Greg Botha saying that if you pass things through Pofadder, visit the local lady in her mineral shop. Do you know, Gerhard?
Yes, yeah. And just thinking about Northern Cape and the people also and on industrial minerals, interesting it would be interesting to get Shirley Hayes of SHIP to tell us about industrial mineral mining days.
Yeah, okay. Right, anyone else? Okay, just last point for the day. I know I have circulated it to some of you, but Gerhard very interestingly picked up a new piece of legislation which relates to the CGS, or Council for Geoscience, wanting to basically capture and encumber and get hold of all your geological information. The legislation as it's written is appalling. It's obviously a piece of cut and paste work, but if it were to go ahead, it would be rather disconcerting for all of us, and it applies to everything in a sense. If you just read it as it stands, it applies to every bit of geological work that you and I have done, the reports I've got, the reports you've probably written for clients, the mineral specimens you have, which are now sort of supposedly, if the legislation goes ahead, have to go and be handed over to the CGS. So people should just take note of it. I think it's something we have to take seriously, and some of the people and companies and that we've passed it on to are getting proper legal advice in terms of what it actually means, whether it would stand up to constitutional muster and things like that. But we'll circulate it with our month-end newsletter, but please take a look at it and at least read it and apply your mind to it. As I say, it's not good stuff, and it's sort of shades of Penwell Maduna back in 1998 when he sort of captured and nationalized mineral rights. So look out for it, and if you're interested, please read it and make your submission. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks, Gerhard. That was really interesting, and again, a bit out of the norm, and thanks to the people, including Michael last week, that talked on lithium, and now this talk today just highlighting that there are all these other minerals which are very much part of our landscape. They're important to us as industrial minerals. If you look around cell phones and all of those things and the buildings we live in, we need those minerals. So thanks, Gerhard, most appreciated.